it had intruded in this dispute between Venezuela and Britain. And the argument was that that dispute involved the Western Hemisphere, which involved the United States, which involved the Monroe Doctrine. And it was an assertion on the part of the United States that, look, we are, in the words of the Secretary of State at the time, only practically sovereign in the Western Hemisphere. Practically sovereign in the Western Hemisphere sort of suggests that the United States calls the shots in the Western Hemisphere. And so this Venezuelan border dispute is something that you should take a look at. You should certainly take a look at the events that lead up to the Spanish War. Oh, my dear Vivian, what is yellow journalism? What is your recollection of yellow journalism, dear Vivian? Vivian S-U-N. Oh, you're saying yellow journalism was this sensational newspaper reporting that emphasized, Tina, I don't want to say bizarre stories, but stories of sensational murders and other things, and that frequently yellow journalism was embellished, not necessarily exactly true, but things that people might want to read. And are there names we associate in terms of publishing with yellow journalism? Just if you might see this on the Advanced Placement United States History Test. Emery, do you recall any names of publishers that are fairly prominent that we associated with yellow journalism? Yes, William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer were two names that we associate with yellow journalism. Hey, how was yellow, Fogel, you are a student of yellow journalism, I know that. How did yellow journalism apply to the Spanish-American War, the build-up of the Spanish-American War?
It influenced them to join, or the Americans to join.
So it influenced yellow journalism, inspired Americans to intervene in Cuba. So are you saying, Kate Leonard, are you saying this to me, that the Spanish-American War was ultimately the United States intervening into an insurrection within Cuba, which was part of Spain? And that's what you are saying to me. So you are saying to me, so then this is what you are saying. You are saying that, look, the Cubans revolted from Spain, and eventually the United States intervened to assist them to get their independence. Is that what you're saying? And so, yes, that's what happened. And so yellow journalism is one of the things that contributes to the mentality that we should do this. I mean, you could make the argument that what happens between Cuba, a colony of Spain, and Spain is the business of Cuba and Spain, and not of the United States. However, given the expansionistic environment, given the buildup of the military, given jingoism, given yellow journalism, which inspires people to sort of say that we need to intervene for the sake of humanity, given the Christian missionary zeal, we said there was a groundswell of sort of support for intervention that McKinley on some level eventually capitulates to. Remember, McKinley is kind of reluctant. Do I want to do this? Do I want to intervene? This is going to cause a war. I've been in war before. I'm not sure I like this. But as the pressure mounts on McKinley from various sides to intervene, eventually he gives the people kind of what it seems like they want. And that is intervention in Cuba that leads to war with Spain. Remember I said, I can't even remember now. Remember I said there's some incredible number. I don't know if anybody wrote it down. Tina, I don't know if you wrote it down, but I did mention at one time, Melissa, I don't know if you wrote it down, some incredible number of people, volunteered to serve in the army in order to go to Cuba to fight for its liberation. And we were pretty sure that we were in fact going to give Cuba their freedom, because Congress actually passed legislation, Kunal, that said that there was no way that we were allowed to take Cuba as a colony. Do you recall the name of that legislation? You do not recall. Yes, go ahead.
Teller.
Yes, indeed. The Teller Amendment said we would not take Cuba as a colony. That was not one of the objectives of the war. The war was 113 days with relatively limited loss of life. Most of the people that died in the Spanish-American War, most of the Americans that died in the Spanish-American War died from disease. The Spanish were quickly subdued. You know, the treaty eventually was signed that ended the war. As a part of the discussion of the treaty, the most controversial thing that occurred was that the United States decides to annex the Philippines, a Spanish possession, as a part of the treaty that ends the Spanish-American War. And we had talked about this. We had talked about how the United States attacked the Philippines, which was a Spanish possession. The annexation of the Philippines was the most controversial thing about the entire Spanish-American War. There was a seeming consensus that America was justified on the basis of humanity, and particularly with the Teller Amendment, to intervene in Cuba. But when we eventually acquire the Philippines and then annex them fundamentally against their will, there is controversy. There are those out there that say we shouldn't do this. The Anti-Imperialist League that we mentioned extensively in our discussion led the charge of saying this is fundamentally a mistake. And they offered lots of reasons why annexing the Philippines and America holding colonies in general was wrong. Can we come up with just one? Just one reason. Shalini, you are a student of the anti-imperialist movement in the United States. Can you give us just one reason, dear Shalini?
Why we wanted to annex?
Well, no, why the anti-imperialists opposed annexation?
Wasn't it like against our beliefs because we
Yes, I think that maybe the most foundational reason that the anti-imperialists wanted to oppose annexation is because they thought it was inconsistent with our morals and values. We were a colony. Self-determination is an important thing. People should be able to govern themselves. And so, you know, we talked, I don't know if you remember, we showed you a list of the people that had written things in support of anti-imperialism. And it was an eclectic list of different people. And we suggested that that eclectic list of different people indicated that there were different reasons to oppose imperialism. You know, Samuel Gompers opposed imperialism because of what it might do to the labor force. Andrew Carnegie thought that on some level it would make us susceptible to attacks and it would be expensive. Jane Addams thought it would distract the attention of Americans from problems here at home to problems abroad. Eventually, McKinley justifies the annexation of the Philippines as an expedient. You know, now here's what I mean by an expedient. What I mean by an expedient is this. What are you going to do? I mean, what can you do? I mean, we have them. They're not ready for self-government. And so what can we do other than to annex them? And so when it was all said and done, the annexation of the Philippines might have been justified more on the basis of not having a better alternative than really having some sort of overriding valuable reason to do so. Now remember, the Filipinos are not going to think that annexing the Philippines is a really good idea. And so what they are going to do is oppose our annexation violently. And what occurs is a 3-year period of an attempt by the United States to crush resistance, which we call the Filipino Insurrection. And the Filipino Insurrection cost hundreds of thousands of Filipino lives and thousands of American lives and gives fuel to the anti-imperialist movement. That insurrection eventually is broken when Emilio Aguinaldo, the Filipino leader, is captured. And eventually, in 1902, the Philippines are put under American civil control. I didn't mention this, Kate Leonard, but the first civil governor of the Philippines is none other than William Howard Taft. William Howard Taft, our heavy-set friend. Remember, William Howard Taft, who goes on to be president, is the first civilian governor of the Philippines, and Taft is going to sort of, you know, move towards improving sanitation and better schools and other things. Eventually, we promised that we would give the Filipinos their independence, and that promise is fulfilled in 1946 when the Philippines is in fact liberated from American rule. Now, in the aftermath